Philippine scientist working on the Coral Protection Campaign and the Campaign Research Department of Oceana. He finished his bachelor's degree in biology, major in zoology from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. He has been a research diver for 10 years and is a reef fish specialist. He was part of the several nation programs in monitoring and assessment of coral reefs in the Philippines and was part of the Benham expedition in 2016. Please help me welcome Mr. Alvin Simon.
Yeah. Can you see the screen,
Yes.
Justin? Okay. Thank you for that introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Alvin Simon. I'm a marine scientist from Oceana, and today I'll be sharing the technologies we use in coral reef assessments and some innovations in coral reef restoration. So, start na tayo. Next slide. So, these are the topics that we will be covering today. It seems a lot, but we'll just breeze through it. Philippines. So the Philippines is part of the Coral Triangle, of coral reefs in the world, with about 27,000 square kilometers of coral reefs in the country alone. The Philippines is also considered a biodiversity hotspot, which can be a double-edged sword in the sense that coral reefs are home to a large array of marine organisms, but are also areas most prone to environmental stressors. In fact, the Philippines has the fifth longest coastline of about 10,000 kilometers of coast, which is home to about 60% of the country's population, making our coral reefs more vulnerable to human-induced stressors. This is why it is paramount to monitor the health of coral reefs and to rapidly assess whenever disturbances occur. Next, now let's move on to the different stressors that impact our coral reefs. Here are just some of the climate change related stressors. The first one is coral bleaching, which happens when the water temperature in the ocean increases. It is characterized by the whitening of the corals, making them prone to physical damage. The next one is storm surge, which damages coral reefs whenever strong impacts of waves crash in the coast, leaving corals overturned or completely obliterated. Ocean acidification happens when there are too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere dissolving into the ocean, lowering the water's pH and increasing the acidity of the ocean and making it harder for corals to build their skeleton. Now let's move on to the anthropogenic stressors. Here are just some of the anthropogenic stressors or man-made stressors that impact coral reefs. The use of cyanide fishing kills many organisms it comes into contact, and it can also induce coral bleaching. Dynamite fishing directly damages the coral reefs and affects other marine creatures such as sea turtles and dolphins. Trolling is a method of commercial fishing wherein it captures more bycatch or those that are not targeted in fisheries. Next is poaching or catching endangered species that are protected by law such as sea turtles, sharks, and other large fishes. Marine pollution usually involves non-biodegradable materials such as plastics. This has been a serious issue, especially because the Philippines is one of the top marine polluting countries in the world. Now, tourism should be managed sustainably because if uninformed because of uninformed tourists that can seriously damage the coral reefs they visit. This is an important matter that should be discussed by tourism managers, especially since corals can only grow a few centimeters each year. And it could take a long time for them to regrow if a tourist such as this one steps on them. Now that we've learned the disturbances that inflict our coral reefs, let me share to you some of the methods we use to measure these impacts. So these methods have been used by many marine scientists in assessing and monitoring the coral reefs. The first one is Mantato, which is a rapid assessment method usually used to estimate damages or to quickly assess the coral cover in an area. It is also an exploratory method in identifying study sites for research that involves large areas. The next method is the phototransect method, which is used to survey the benthic community or the coral reef substrate. It is done by taking pictures along a 50-meter transect and analyzing these photos using a program called Coral Point Count with Excel extension or CPCE. This aids the scientists in determining the coral cover, algal cover, and other general benthic categories. The scientist manually identifies the genera of the coral and the other benthic organisms. And lastly, fish visual census, which is actually my specialty, involves us going down the water and swimming along the transect while identifying the species of reef fishes we encounter. We also estimate their count and their sizes to determine the reef fish community biomass. These are all helpful tools in assessing the health of coral reefs, but some innovators suggest that there are ways to improve these methods. They mentioned that these methods are labor intensive, expensive, and that only a handful of people can do. This is why many are inventing ways to integrate technology in marine science. So let's go into those technologies. The first one of these innovations is Fish Eye. It is a semi-automated reef fish visual sensor system. This technology should help marine scientists in estimating the reef fish biomass in coral reefs. The two main proponents of this project are UP professors and distinguished scientists in their own fields. I am proud to have collaborated and learned from both of them, actually. Dr. Pros Naval is a professor in the Computer Science Department in UP Diliman, while Dr. Laura David is an oceanographer from the Marine Science Institute, also in UP Diliman. So this is how Fish Eye works. The Fish Eye system consists of two major components. The first component is a camera rig consisting of 2 to 8 cameras oriented parallel to the seabed and mounted on a simple stand with 4 legs. The other component is a video analyzer software that performs stereo analysis and image recognition on the collected videos. So this is how we deploy Fish Eye. We calibrate it using a checkers board, increasing accuracy in 3D identification of reef fishes, and it is left in the reef to survey the passing fishes. For the sample output, the main output of this software are video clips containing estimates of fish size, density, and species diversity that may be exported in CSV format for end users. This employs machine learning and needs to be updated whenever it encounters a species of fish that is not yet in its database. I am also one of their consultants in fish identification and help them in contributing in their database. This doesn't necessarily replace reef fish specialists such as myself, but it would be an interesting method to deploy in deeper areas where divers can't reach, which is one of their project goals in the years ahead. So much for Fish Eye. Let's move on to ARRAS and CRAVAT. ARRAS, or the Automated Rapid Reef Assessment System, and CRAVAT, or the Coral Reef Assessment and Visualization Advanced Tools, are both DOST Gaia funded projects of the National Institute of Physics in UP Diliman. These projects yielded the Teardrop and Torpedo, which are tools equipped with cameras and sensors that are towed along the coastline. The goal of these technologies is to aid the local government units in surveying and monitoring their coral reefs, especially in the event of a major disturbance such as storm surges, outbreaks, and coral bleaching events. So the main proponent of this project is Dr. Maricor Soriano, a UP professor from the National Institute of Physics. She's a dear friend and a mentor, and I am proud to say that I was one of the first ones to deploy this technology and help her team calibrate ARRAS during its testing period. So this is a sample output of the ARRAS method, wherein the images are stitched to form a panorama of the underwater environment. This technology has been donated around the country and have surveyed numerous sites. It is also a recipient of several national and international awards. Okay, the next one is now we will move forward on to the diversity, complement quantitative transect methods by diving. It was used, and in the expedition, Oceana supported the scientists from UP Los Baños in bringing this technology in the Philippines. It was deployed up to the depths of 50 to 100 meters, where we assessed the deep sea reef fish community. During this time, I was affiliated in UPLB and was the one assessing or analyzing the output of this method. So how does it works? Browse employs stereo video systems for a variety of purposes, predominantly for fish density, fish 3D distribution mapping, and fish size measurements. Prior to deployment, the cameras are calibrated to effectively measure the lengths of the reef fishes. During the deployment, our team used hundreds of meters of ropes to help retrieve the system after the deployment. And these videos are downloaded and are analyzed in the lab. Actually, we chanced upon a tiger shark, which is a rare find in our oceans. This is a good news for our oceans because tiger sharks are important top predators, which indicate high diversity and good health in reef fish communities. Ayun. So, we saw that in Benham Rise. So, moving on, here are some other tools used in monitoring and assessment of marine resources. One of our partners, LAMAVE, or the Large Marine Vertebrates Research Institute in the Philippines, is a non-government organization geared towards the protection of marine megafauna. They are stationed in southern Leyte, where they monitor whale sharks and rays in the area. They are able to deploy satellite tags monitoring the movement of whale sharks into Pataha Reef. And these tags send signals whenever whale sharks breach the surface of the ocean. The shark scan, on the other hand, is an adaptation of the ARRAS system, where this MESA technology is combined with cameras and sensors and uses images and sound to map the seafloor. So yun. So those are the research method. Now let's andyan pa kayo guys. So ecological restoration can include both passive and active strategies. Passive restoration strategies include management actions that protect the habitat and allow for natural recovery and improve ecological functioning. Marine protected area are areas in the sea specially dedicated to the protection and maintenance of biodiversity and of natural and associated cultural resources. And these areas are managed through legal or other effective means. We're more interested in the active restoration since you are engineering students. So these are the technologies for coral reef restoration. Active restoration, on the other hand, are strategies that include different interventions that aim to speed up coral gardening, coral transplant, and establishing artificial reefs. So coral gardening and transplantation are mitigating measures that hastens the rate of coral growth and development by allowing corals to grow in areas with less stressors such as sedimentation and siltation. This methods uses coral fractures such as storm surges. Now moving on to artificial reefs. While there are two types of artificial reefs, the structural and physical restoration. Through artificial reefs provide substrate for coral recruitment and coral establishment. Artificial reefs uses materials like concrete and steel bars. So this is a good example of an artificial reef found in the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. These are deployed by Reef Ecologic, a group of scientists working on active coral reef restoration, and features this dome-like structure called the greenhouse, with these concrete sculptures where corals can settle. Actually, one of my good friends from college is part of this initiative after he did his master's in James Cook University, and actually he's watching the live right now. So yeah, so we're just about done with the presentation. Let me just leave you with this take-home message that any type of restoration, may it be passive or active, or any innovation in coral reef assessment, as long as it is done using sound science, and the possible positive effects outweighs the negative effects, is already a valid effort towards the conservation of our marine resources. So yun, thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned something from this presentation, and I personally hope you consider a career involving environmental conservation and habitat protection. And before we go to our next speaker, let me share with you a video I prepared featuring Oceana's most recent expedition to Panaon Island. I hope you enjoy. Enzo, can you share?
Okay.